Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Today's story takes place in a quiet residential neighborhood where one woman suddenly decides a public alley belonged exclusively to her. What follows is a slow escalation involving false property claims, illegal fencing, and a neighbor who keeps detailed notes on everyone else's movements. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. My neighbor spies on me, writes down license plates, and built a fence on my property. What now? For context, imagine a capital L. At the top of the L is a house owned by a man I'll call Jim. At the corner of the L is where entitled neighbor lives. I'll call her Karen. The bottom of the L is my house. There's an alley that runs between Jim and Karen's houses and through my backyard. I park behind my house, so I have access to the back part of the alley. Karen lives on Street A, I live on Street B and have access to alley from my street, so I don't even drive past her house to get behind mine. Well, Jim had yard work done, and the landscaper pulled his truck with lawnmower through the back half of the alley, coming from my street and parked behind me. I had to go to the store and asked him to back up, which he did. I come back a while later with groceries, and Karen's out back yelling at Jim about having his company parking on her property. She says that she's going to put a fence at the end of the alley, which is in my yard, to prevent anyone from using the alley. I overhear this and ask her what's going on, and she responds by telling me it's none of my GD business. I said it is my business if she's planning to put a fence up on my property. That's when she tells me that it's her property, not mine, and that I'm not legally allowed to drive on her property, and if I don't start parking on the street, she's going to put up a fence right behind my car to block me in. I tell her that she cannot block my car in and that the alley is a public alley, not her property, and that the alley runs through part of my backyard, so I have every right to use it. Jim has since told his company to park on the street as he wants nothing to do with the problem. I looked up the zoning maps to prove that the alley is indeed a public alley and not owned by any of the houses. Karen did put a fence up directly behind my car on my property. My husband called the police and they told her to move it, so she did. She moved it so that it goes across the alley, preventing anyone from accessing her side of it. I don't really care because I don't use her side, but she's also posted no trespassing signs all over her property and a private drive sign in the alley. So far, nothing else has happened, but I have noticed that when my son, mom, or myself are outside, Karen will come out and stand on her back porch and watch us. I even caught her writing down my mom's license plate number the other day. Not sure what she's trying to do, but if her goal is to try to get me evicted or something, joke's on her, my mom owns this house. So far, I'm just trying to ignore her, but I always feel like I have to walk on pins and needles when I go outside because I never know when she's going to come up and spy on me. Update. My mom went to the building and zoning department here in town, and this is what we found out. The alley has been vacated by the city. When that happens, it reverts ownership to the houses that touch the alley, so Karen and Jim own the front half of the alley, and Jim and I own the back half of it. Legally, I'm allowed to use the back section and park behind my house. There have not been any further issues, but if she complains or calls the police on me for trespassing, at least now I have proof of who owns what. The funniest part's how confident she was while being completely wrong. Telling you it's not your business while threatening to fence off your yard is wild. And the moment police got involved, suddenly the fence moves? That says a lot. And our next story. When a manager pushes too far at the gym. I started working part-time at a gym at the beginning of last month. Most of what I'm hired to do is check people in at the desk, make protein shakes, and answer phones/emails. About 5 to 10% of the job description involves cleaning the studio in between classes, which involves wiping down the weights, some of which are very heavy. Yesterday, I was working my normal shift and bending down to pick up a paper that a client had dropped on the floor when I pulled my back like a sprain or something. I immediately told one of the managers on shift and said I would probably be totally fine. I just needed to ice for a few minutes and not pick up any of the heavy weights for the rest of the shift. I wasn't planning on filling out an injury report unless they wanted me to, and they were understaffed, so I was fine sticking it out for the last 3 hours of my shift as long as I wasn't heavy lifting. The manager said that was totally fine and nicely told me to get him if I needed anything else. About an hour later, I was helping my coworker clean the workout studio and was cleaning the benches while she did the heavy weights. Generally, I would have done the weights since I'm about 30 years younger than her and more able-bodied on a normal day. However, she's more than capable and has cleaned them many times. The other manager on shift walked by the fitness room, gave me a dirty look, and asked me to switch to do the weights and made some under-the-breath comment about not believing that I was making my coworker do it. Then she walked away without listening to my explanation about my back. I chased after her and said that she was right and I was definitely too injured to do the assigned job she'd given me. Also, that I had to use my PTO to leave immediately to go see a doctor, and asked her to get me an injury report to fill out. She looked like I slapped her in the face and started to backpedal, saying that I didn't have to do the weights, but I doubled down and demanded an injury report ASAP. Then I clocked out and left, leaving them severely understaffed. I told the other manager what happened on the way out, and he sort of laughed because he knows that the other manager is generally a B who's much more likely to get stressed about the understaffing, while he's very chill and a go-with-the-flow leader. Honestly, I should probably thank her for giving me that push to see a doctor / leave early, because they said if my back keeps hurting, I have a good case for workman's comp. It's so infuriating how management often pushes people to ignore their limits just because they're short-staffed. And yeah, I mean, who hasn't felt like they had to pretend they were fine when they weren't? It's like everyone expects you to be some kind of robot at work these days. Have you ever been in a situation where you just wanted to scream but had to keep smiling? And our next story. Aggressive driver versus e-bike versus parked police cruiser. First, a little context, because without it, I'd sound like just another cyclist whining about drivers. I'm a college student and I bike to campus every day. It's not a long commute, maybe 15 minutes on a good day, but there's one specific stretch that always makes me tense. It's a road-only zone where bicycles are explicitly not allowed on the sidewalk. There are signs, there's a painted bike symbol on the road. Legally, I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to do. Most drivers don't care. They see me hugging the edge of the lane, realize I'm not swerving or being unpredictable, and they just go around me. Some look annoyed, some don't even notice. That's fine. I've learned to live with the occasional honk or muttered insult. I also ride a pretty cheap, slightly janky e-bike. It's nothing fancy, and it definitely doesn't scream speed demon, but it helps me keep pace and get out of the way when I need to. That detail matters later. A few weeks ago, though, I met someone who wasn't just annoyed, he was aggressive. I was riding through that same road-only stretch when a Ford SUV came up behind me. I didn't clock the exact model, just that it was big, boxy, and loud. As he passed, the driver leaned out his window and started yelling, the usual stuff, "Get off the road! Roads are for cars! You're too slow!" I've heard variations of that speech more times than I can count, so I ignored him and kept pedaling. Then he did something that made my stomach drop. He cut sharply in front of me and slammed on his brakes. I barely managed to stop in time. My tires screeched, my heart jumped into my throat, and for a split second, I was sure I was about to eat the back of his bumper. He didn't even stop. The moment I avoided hitting him, he floored it and sped off, yelling, "Better be careful next time, bike!" I stood there for a moment, shaking, trying to get my breathing under control. I was furious, but also painfully aware that I didn't get his plate number and probably couldn't prove anything anyway. It felt like one of those situations where the driver knows they can get away with it. At lunch that day, I told one of my friends what happened. He's an EMT, and he doesn't scare easily. When I finished the story, his expression had completely changed. "That's attempted murder," he said flatly. I laughed it off at first, but he didn't smile. He told me he'd seen what happens when a cyclist actually gets brake checked successfully. Broken necks, head injuries, road rash that turns into infections. People who never ride again if they're lucky enough to walk at all. He was genuinely angry, not just on my behalf, but because he'd seen the aftermath too many times. 2 days later, I ran into the same SUV again. This time, the yelling started before he even reached me. "Get on the sidewalk, bike!" I recognized the voice immediately. My whole body tensed. Sure enough, he pulled ahead and tried the same move. I was more prepared this time and managed to avoid the crash again, but my hands were shaking when it was over. I told my EMT friend again. He was livid. I, on the other hand, just felt tired. I didn't see what I could realistically do. If he actually hit me, I'd lose that fight no matter who was legally right. I figured the safest thing was to hope our schedules stopped overlapping. They didn't. Every few days, whenever we happened to be on that same stretch of road at the same time, he'd try something, yelling, swerving too close, slamming on the brakes just hard enough to scare me. It became a game to him, and I was the unwilling participant. About a week later, my EMT friend told me he'd mentioned the situation to one of his friends who worked campus police. That guy was just as angry as he was. Apparently, brake checking a cyclist is one of those things that makes law enforcement furious because it's so unnecessary and so dangerous. They came up with a plan. The idea was simple. Have a campus police officer parked along that stretch of road, officially assigned to speed enforcement, and wait. If the guy showed up again and pulled his usual stunt, they'd catch him in the act. I agreed immediately. At that point, I just wanted it to stop. For a few days, nothing happened. Every morning, I'd see the police car parked in the same spot where the road split into a left turn lane and a straight-through lane. I rode past it uneventfully, half hoping the SUV would show up and half praying it wouldn't. Then one morning, I heard it. "Get the hell off the road, effer!" I didn't even have to look back. I knew exactly who it was. Something in me snapped. Instead of freezing up, I yelled back, "Catch me then!" and took off. I pedaled as hard as I could and hit the throttle on my e-bike. I'm not fast, but I can move when I need to. That just seemed to make him angrier. I heard his engine roar as he accelerated. He swung into the left lane while I stayed to the right. I risked a glance and saw him clearly for the first time. He was an older guy, red-faced, jaw clenched, yelling with his window down. I couldn't hear the words over the wind, but I didn't need to. I could see the police car ahead. As we got closer, I started to slow down. That's when he made his move. He cut hard back into my lane, trying to brake check me again. Whether it was his speed, his rage, or sheer stupidity, he swung too wide. He plowed straight into the back of the parked police cruiser. The impact was loud enough that I felt it through the air. I barely had time to react before I clipped the side of his SUV and went down. I wasn't going fast anymore, maybe 15 miles an hour, so I mostly slid. My bike didn't fare as well. I heard the unmistakable crack of the frame snapping. The officer was out of his car instantly, and furious doesn't even begin to describe it. He was shouting into his radio, calling for backup and an ambulance. The driver stumbled out of his SUV, airbags deployed, looking shocked and confused. Everyone was incredibly lucky. No one was seriously hurt. The driver had been going maybe 25 miles an hour when he hit the cruiser. Still, it was more than enough to total his vehicle. While we were waiting, the officer started talking to him. The smell hit before anything else did. Alcohol. In the middle of the morning, before 9 a.m. That explained a lot. The driver was arrested on the spot. DUI, illegal lane change, reckless driving, and whatever else comes with slamming into a police car while trying to intimidate a cyclist. I didn't get the full list, but it was long. Another unit showed up, then an ambulance. I was checked out, shaken, but fine. My bike, on the other hand, was destroyed. The frame was snapped clean through. Over the next few weeks, I learned how expensive being an aggressive idiot can be. His insurance declared his SUV totaled because the airbags went off. He was on the hook for repairs to the police cruiser. He also had to pay for my e-bike since it was clearly his fault. From what I heard, the DUI charges alone were enough to seriously threaten his license. With any luck, he won't be driving for a long time and definitely won't be terrorizing cyclists anymore. I still ride that route every day. The difference now is that when cars pass me, they just pass. No yelling, no brake checks, and every time I ride past that stretch of road, I can't help but think about how close I came to being another statistic, and how spectacularly that guy managed to wreck his own life instead. There's something darkly ironic about him screaming at you to get off the road, and then losing his car, his freedom, and probably his license because he couldn't handle sharing it. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.